In this short essay, I will highlight the crucial facets of theoretical and non-theoretical approaches, as well as explain which approach is more scientific of the two. To clutch the nature of literary theory, it is imperative that we comprehend the incongruities between the two approaches. Ms. Carusi and Professor Oliphant also indicate that there are two main ways in which cultural objects can be approached. They can be approached non-theoretically or theoretically. The first feature of non-theoretical approaches to literary works is interpretation, and this involves a number of assumptions and distinct training. Therefore, interpretation is not merely a matter of spontaneous or intuitive response to a work. It encompasses a state-of-the-art familiarity of the language of the work and a knowledge of literary, artistic, and cultural conventions. To illustrate, in literary studies we often encounter terms such as imagery, metaphor, character, plot, and so on. All these are terms for techniques that form part of literary conventions. The next aspect of non-theoretical approaches is laid out by Carusi and Oliphant, is appreciation. Appreciation is closely related to interpretation, recognizing cultural objects' value, whether as a category of objects or recognizing the value or exquisiteness of a specific object is how we appreciate cultural objects. Appreciation cannot always be seen as a spontaneous reaction. It is also the consequence of training. Edifying someone on appreciation of literature entails the transmission of values. Values are a highly contentious social and sometimes political issue. Moving on to criticism, which involves interpretation as well as appraisal or evaluation. A literary critic judges whether a work is a good instance of its type or genre or period, or simply whether it is a good work of literature, art, or music. A high caliber of expertise in specific areas or genre is required by an individual critic, largely since this is a great discernment essential for criticism to take place. Knowledge of the historical development of an art form is the domain of scholarship. Scholarship sometimes includes a study of broader historical, social, and sometimes political or ideological developments that may influence the production or reception of the cultural objects in question. None of the aforementioned non-theoretical approaches are isolated from one another, and further in this short essay we shall neither are they isolated or from theoretical approaches. We shall now look at the extensive sphere of theory. According to Carusi and Oliphant, there are 8 key features which all theories share. The distinction between theory and object, the distinction between theory and practice, definition, description, explanation, theoretical terms, normativity, criteria of acceptability of a theory. I will discuss each aspect briefly. Since the study of literature entails the study of cultural objects and cultural activities or practices, the theoretical endeavor has 2 aspects, the theory and what the theory is about. The object of study is what the theory covers. For instance, Carusi and Oliphant mention the game of tennis involves various elements, among which are the rules and techniques of the game, the tennis player, the coach. The object is the game of tennis. The practice is the tennis players playing the game. The theory is the coach's knowledge of the game. In the aforementioned example, tennis practice is performed by the player who does, and theory is performed by the coach who teaches. Thus, we directly understand that the state of doing cannot be disconnected from the theoretical aspect. The tennis athlete must also possess an understanding of a theory of the game, while theory and practice must be distinguished. The two are closely interconnected. According to Carusi and Oliphant, theory is itself a form of practice. Theory aims to arrive at genuine knowledge about its object of study, that is, precise, organized, and systematic knowledge. This class of knowledgeability is realized only in the presence of a clearly delimited area of study, a method of inquiry that is uniquely suited to it, and a set of terms belonging specifically to that area of study. For example, the object of study in the field of cultural theory is the cultural environment. In view of important differences between the objects of study, there will be important differences in the types of theories that are produced. It can then be deduced that the nature of the theory proposed hinges very much on the definition of an object. Description is the next aspect we move to, and it can be seen conjointly with definition. In all actuality, the initial thing we all must do when we wish to understand anything is to describe it. Once I have a precise problem area which I can begin to confront, I must single out and provide a description solely for the relevant aspects. If I am to achieve any understanding, however, I must choose to describe only those features that are relevant to the problem. Explanation involves the forming and testing of hypotheses about the reasons for or causes of particular occurrences. Each hypothesis must be tested in order to discover whether it has indeed reflected the cause of the problem. Explanations take the form of appeals to general principles. General principles, or GP, express regular connections between conditions and events. Theoretical terms are the terms which are introduced by the theory in order to define, describe, or explain the object or area of study. Expressions used in theory are intended to relate the most prominent aspects of the object of study. A noteworthy instance, we saw that Propp disagreed with the use of the term motif and replaced it with the term function, which he thought picked out the real common features of folk tales. Theories are normative when they not only describe and explain how things are, but also say how they ought to be. Normativity infers a norm or standard to be met in human behavior, and is a runner in the scholarly lanes of human sciences, chiefly in the descriptions given of the object of area of study. A very notable instance in which this transpires is by the description of phenomena in terms that imply a value judgment. This can be observed in famous artistic and literary works, and is frequently defined in terms which imply that it is of less value than high art and literature. We have already come across two of the criteria for accepting a theory. These are hypotheses that can be tested and well-defined terms. We will be focusing on two more here. The first criterion is derived from the fact that theories, as we have seen, are sets of systematically interconnected principles. The quotation "systematically interconnected" suggests that the principles must be coherent. The coherence of a theory states that the theory must contain no contradictions, and the principles of the theory must display a certain unity in that they must all belong to a unified view of the object of study. Informativeness is the next of the criteria, and advocates that the theory must be genuinely informative, which means it must cast new light on the object of study, and not simply repeat descriptions and explanations that are already available in other theories. In conclusion, a completely non-theoretical approach is comprised of a multiplicity of assumptions, of which there are some with no attempt is made to justify them. According to Carusi and Oliphant, that would be extremely laborious and ultimately tedious if every interpretation of a literary work had to begin with a detailed analysis and justification of the assumptions made. Theories, on the other hand, are proposed within the sciences, and the human sciences study human behavior. The study of literature is the branch of human sciences. Thus, we now observe that the theoretical way is the more scientific of the two approaches we have discussed in this short essay.